The hall of crystal sang with light, its walls humming faintly with power as suitors from across the empire gathered. The bonding ceremony was meant to be a sacred moment, a union of minds and souls between rulers and their chosen partners. For the royal line of the Valari, no throne could be held without a bond. It was tradition, law, and faith all bound together. And at the center of it all sat Princess Serenia. Her robes shimmered with threads of starlight, but her pale eyes stared into emptiness. Serenia had been blind since birth. She moved carefully, guided by the hand of her attendant, her chin lifted in dignity, though her heart trembled within her chest. For years, whispers had followed her. The blind princess, the broken heir, she will doom the empire. In her people's eyes, strength meant perfection, beauty, sharpness, power, and Serenia had none of these. Her frail body often failed her. She struggled to stand too long. Her eyes, though luminous, had never once seen the stars her people worshipped. But what hurt most was not her weakness. It was the loneliness. Suitors had come from 100 worlds, noble sons and brilliant daughters, each one tested in the bonding ritual. Each one left disappointed. The princess's bond flared briefly but never lasted. Some even tore their hands away in disgust, claiming her soul felt empty. Others muttered that her blindness was a curse, that her bloodline was tainted. Now once again, Serenia sat on the throne's edge, listening to the scrape of boots, the hushed murmurs, the sharp laugh of another suitor leaving without so much as a bow. "Another failure," a courtier whispered too loudly. "She is unfit," another voice sneered. "She will never rule. The bond will not come." Serenia's hands clenched in her lap. Her heart ached, but she forced her face to remain calm, serene, regal. She was a princess. She could not cry before them. Yet inside, she wondered, why am I not enough? Why does no one stay? Why does no one even try to see me? Her father, the emperor, sat high upon his dais, expression cold and unreadable. To him, Serenia was a duty, not a daughter. If she failed to bond, the empire would pass to another house. He had made that clear. The thought cut deeper than any insult from the crowd. To be unwanted by strangers was pain enough, but to be unwanted by her own blood, that was unbearable. Still, Serenia carried herself with grace. She listened as the next suitor approached. His footsteps were confident, his voice proud as he knelt. "I will attempt the bond, princess." She extended her hand. Their palms touched. For a moment, a spark of connection, hope lit within her chest. But as their minds brushed, the suitor recoiled as though burned. "She is broken," he spat, his voice sharp with disgust. "There is nothing there. Nothing worth joining." Laughter rippled across the hall. The suitor stormed away. Serenia lowered her hand slowly, carefully, though her fingers trembled. The sound of laughter haunted her like knives. Alone on her throne, Serenia tilted her head back. She could not see the starlit ceiling, but she imagined it. The constellations her tutors had described, the vast sky she would never behold. All she wanted was to be seen, not as a symbol, not as a failure, but as herself. Yet tonight, like every night, she was left with silence. The hall emptied. The nobles drifted away, muttering of succession, of politics, of shame.
Serenia remained, her hands folded neatly, her heart breaking quietly where none could see. And in that silence, a single tear escaped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly before her attendant could notice. A princess must never weep. But deep inside, Serenia whispered a prayer into the dark void she had known all her life. Please, let someone find me. Let someone see me. Unbeknownst to her, far away in the guest quarters of the palace, a human outsider was arriving. A man who did not know the customs, who did not share the prejudices of the Volari. A man who would soon change everything. And though Serenia could not see it yet, the bond she longed for was closer than she ever dared believe.
The palace of the Volari was not a place for humans. Its halls were built of crystal and living stone, humming with energies no human technology could mimic. Every corridor seemed to glow with an otherworldly beauty, a beauty that reminded outsiders, you do not belong here. Commander Elias Ward felt that with every step. A soldier, a diplomat by necessity, Elias had come to this world as part of a fragile peace mission. The Volari Empire held vast power, and his government wanted friendship, or at least neutrality. But when political unrest broke out, Elias had been stranded here, left as a representative, until further notice. Most Volari nobles looked at him with thinly veiled contempt. To them, humans were primitive, too emotional, too fragile, too short-lived. Useful as curiosities, perhaps, but never equals. And so when the great hall filled with nobles and suitors for the royal bonding ceremony, Elias was not among them as a contender. He was there as a decoration, an oddity in a plain uniform, standing at the back, silent, observing. He watched as one suitor after another approached the princess. He listened as they failed, recoiled, mocked. His jaw tightened. Elias had seen cruelty before, on battlefields and in politics, but there was something especially bitter in watching a young woman treated like a broken tool. From his corner, he studied her carefully. Princess Serenia sat poised on her throne, her back straight, her pale eyes unfocused. She did not flinch when insults were thrown. She did not bow her head when men walked away in disgust. Only her hands betrayed her, clenching slightly in her lap. She was blind, yes, but Elias could see something the others missed. She was listening. Every tone, every whisper, every vibration of sound in the hall seemed to reach her. He could see the strength in her restraint, the quiet courage it took to remain composed when the world mocked you. And for reasons he couldn't explain, Elias felt a pang in his chest. She doesn't deserve this. At the end of the ceremony, when the hall began to empty, the nobles whispered among themselves. Some laughed openly. The emperor left without a word. Even the princess's attendants shifted uncomfortably, as though ashamed of her. Elias could not stop himself. He stepped forward. The guards stiffened. A murmur swept the crowd. A human had no place approaching the throne, but Elias ignored them. He walked until he stood a respectful distance away, then bowed, awkwardly, imperfectly, but with sincerity. Your Highness, I am Elias Ward, of Earth. It's an honor to meet you. For a moment, silence. Serenia tilted her head slightly, as if surprised that anyone was still there. Earth, she repeated softly. Her voice was calm, musical, but tinged with fatigue. You are the human diplomat. Yes, Elias admitted, or what's left of one. I don't imagine I'm held in very high regard here. To his astonishment, a flicker of amusement crossed her lips. No, you are not, she said honestly. Something in her tone made Elias chuckle, not cruelly, not mockingly, but with genuine humor. And for the first time that night, Serenia's expression shifted.
Her lips curved ever so slightly, a smile. It was small, fragile, but real. "Why do you speak to me, human?" she asked at last. "The others, they only look through me." Elias hesitated, then answered simply, "Because I see you." The words hung in the air, soft but unshakable. Serenya's breath caught. For years, people had spoken about her, around her, over her, rarely to her, and never with such direct honesty. Before she could reply, a courtier hurried forward, glaring at Elias. "Enough! You insult this hall, human. Step away." But Serenya raised her hand. Her voice, gentle yet firm, silenced the man. "No. Let him speak." The courtier froze, then reluctantly withdrew. The hall was nearly empty now. Only the echoes of their words remained. Serenya turned her blind eyes towards Elias, as though trying to trace the shape of him in the air. "You see me," she repeated softly, almost to herself. "Strange words from a stranger." Elias bowed once more. "Strange words," he agreed, "but true." And then he stepped back, letting the silence return. As he left the hall, Serenya remained seated, her fingers lightly touching her lips. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. No one had ever dared. For the first time in many years, the blind princess felt something stir inside her. Not hope, exactly, not yet, but curiosity, a warmth. Perhaps the human was foolish. Perhaps he was beneath her. And yet, his words lingered, echoing louder than all the insults she had ever endured. "Because I see you." And though she could not see him, she found herself wishing, desperately, inexplicably, that she could.
The next evening, the court gathered again for what had become routine failure. Another ceremony, another round of noble suitors eager for glory, yet unwilling to risk their pride on the blind princess. The air was thick with impatience. Many whispered that these rituals should end altogether. The empire could not wait forever for a ruler who would never bond. Princess Serenya sat on her throne, her posture perfect, her face calm. But inside she felt weary. Each ceremony was another cut to her spirit, each rejection another wound she could not show. The nobles lined up, their silks rustling, their jeweled hands trembling with ambition. Yet none dared approach first. None wanted the shame of another failure. And then, unexpectedly, her father, the emperor, lifted a hand. "Let the human step forward," he commanded. A ripple of shock spread through the chamber. Heads turned, gasps filled the hall. "The human?" a noble spat. "An insult!" another cried. "He is not of our kind. His mind cannot bond with hers." But the emperor's word was law. The guards moved, parting the crowd. At the back of the hall, Commander Elias Ward stiffened. He had not expected to be called. He had only come to observe, to honor his posting, nothing more. But the emperor's gaze was fixed on him like a blade. There was no choice. Elias stepped forward, boots echoing on the crystal floor. He felt every eye burning into him, full of hatred, curiosity, disdain. Serenya's head tilted slightly. She recognized his footsteps, slower, heavier, different from the flowing stride of Valari nobles. Her heart gave a strange, unfamiliar flutter. The emperor's voice was cold. "Let this be our proof. Even the lowest outsider will fail to bond. Then the matter will be ended." Elias stopped before Serenia. For a moment, silence stretched between them. He bowed, lower this time, out of respect, not just for her, but for the vulnerability she carried with such grace. "Do you consent, princess?" he asked quietly. The hall erupted in scoffs. No one had ever asked her. They simply assumed. Serenia's lips parted in surprise. Then, softly, she said, "I consent." Their hands met, and the world shifted. At first, there was the faint spark she had felt with countless others, but instead of fading, it grew. It surged like wildfire, wrapping around them both. Their minds brushed, then intertwined, threads weaving together as if they had always been meant to. Serenia gasped aloud. For the first time in her life, she saw. Not through her eyes, but through his. She glimpsed the hall, the glowing crystals, the stunned faces of the crowd. It was blurred, fleeting, but real. Her breath caught in wonder. So this is light? Elias staggered, gripping her hand tighter. He felt her emotions flood into him. Loneliness, pain, the ache of years of rejection, but also fierce intelligence, dignity, and a desperate, aching longing to be loved. He nearly collapsed under the weight of it. And then he felt something else, a warmth, a spark of joy at being seen. The bond was undeniable, complete. The hall fell utterly silent. Gasps echoed as nobles stared in horror. Some cried out that it was unnatural, an abomination. Others whispered in fear. Never in history had a human bonded with a Valari royal. It was impossible. It was forbidden. The emperor rose to his feet, fury blazing in his eyes. "Break it, now!" Elias tried to pull away. Serenia tried too, but their hands would not part. The bond held them like invisible chains, threads of light stretching between their souls. The harder they struggled, the stronger it became. Serenia's blind eyes shone faintly with the reflection of his sight. She whispered, almost in awe, "I can see. Through you." Elias swallowed hard, heart racing. "And I can feel you. All of you." The emperor's voice thundered. "Enough! Guards, sever them, by force if you must." But as armored soldiers approached, the bond flared again, bursting outward in a shockwave of energy. The guards were thrown back, weapons clattering to the floor. The crowd erupted in chaos. Some shouted for Elias's death. Others cried that Serenia had cursed them. A few stared in fearful reverence, wondering if this was destiny. Through the chaos, Serenia clung to Elias's hand, her voice trembling, yet firm. "Do not let go. Please." "I won't," Elias swore, meeting her unfocused gaze with steady resolute. In that moment, both knew, whatever this bond was, it could not be undone. But to the Empire, it was a crime. The palace had turned into a storm. Whispers flooded the corridors. Every chamber echoed with outrage. The princess has bonded with a human. Some called it scandal, others sacrilege. A few even whispered that it was a sign from the stars themselves. But Serenia did not hear those voices tonight. She sat in her private chambers, a place of silence and shadows. Her attendants had been dismissed. Only Elias remained, seated awkwardly at the far side of the room. Two guards stood outside the door, but neither dared step in. The Emperor had ordered them kept under watch, yet he had not broken the bond. Perhaps he could not. The air between Serenia and Elias felt fragile, as if one wrong word would shatter the strange new connection between them. At last, Serenia spoke. Her voice was soft, hesitant. When our hands touched, I saw. For a moment I saw the hall, the colors, the light. It was as if I had eyes. Elias leaned forward slightly. It was through mine. I don't know how, but the bond must have linked us. Her pale eyes turned toward him, unseeing yet searching. Tell me, she whispered, what did I look like to you? The question caught him off guard. He frowned. What do you mean? No one ever tells me, she said quietly. They speak of duty, of weakness, of shame, but never of me. What do you see, Elias? For a long moment he studied her, her silver hair falling in soft waves against her robe. The delicate tilt of her chin, always held a little too high, as though defying the world. The faint trace of sorrow in her lips, as though she had been carrying sorrow since childhood. I see strength, he said at last. I see a woman who stands tall when others would have broken. I see someone who deserves to be loved, not pitied. And yes, I see beauty. Serenia's breath caught. Her cheeks warmed, though she tried to hide it. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not as a symbol, not as a princess, but as a woman. She turned her face slightly, almost shy. You speak boldly for a human. He allowed himself a faint smile. We're not as polite as your nobles, I suppose, but we are honest. For the first time, she laughed, a quiet, startled laugh, like water trickling over stone. Elias felt his chest tighten at the sound. Minutes stretched into hours. They spoke of small things, her people's songs, the stars she had never seen, the gardens she could only smell but not behold. Elias described each in detail, the colors of blossoms, the shimmer of moonlight on crystal leaves, the dance of starlight across the palace spires. Through his words, Serenia painted the world in her mind, and through the bond, she felt the warmth behind his descriptions, not just duty, but care. You describe it so vividly. It's as if I can almost see it through you. That's because I want you to, he said simply. A silence followed, not awkward, but tender. Serenia's fingers brushed against the carved arm of her chair, restless. She wanted to reach out, but did not dare. Elias, she whispered at last, why do you stay? My people despise you. My father may cast you out, or worse. Why risk yourself for me? He hesitated, the weight of her question heavy in the air. Then he said with quiet conviction, because I've seen what they refuse to. You are not broken, Serenia. You're more whole than anyone I've met. And if I leave you now, then I'd be no better than the rest of them. Her throat tightened. A part of her wanted to dismiss his words as kindness, pity, illusion, but the bond betrayed him. She could feel his sincerity radiating through it, solid, steady, unshakable. She bowed her head, blinking rapidly against tears. For years she had begged the stars for someone who would see her. Now, against all reason, it was a human who had answered. The door suddenly rattled. A guard's voice barked from outside. Enough! The Emperor summons the human at dawn. He will decide what to do with this
Abomination. The spell of the moment broke. Elias stood, his jaw set, ready to face whatever awaited. But before he turned to leave, Serenya's hand shot out, trembling, catching his sleeve. "Don't let them take you," she whispered fiercely. "Please." He placed his hand gently over hers. Their bond pulsed warmly between them. "They won't. Not as long as you hold on." For the first time in her life, Serenya felt not weakness, but hope. Fragile, dangerous hope. And in that hope, the first seeds of love began to take root.
The dawn came too quickly. The Emperor had summoned Elias before the High Council. Word of the forbidden bond had already spread like fire through the empire. Nobles whispered of disgrace, priests muttered of curses. Some even demanded Serenya be stripped of her title. But in the dim hours before the hearing, Serenya and Elias remained under guard, separated in different wings of the palace. Serenya sat in her chamber, pale hands twisting in her lap. The bond still thrummed faintly inside her, a pulse of warmth that told her Elias was alive, awake, restless. She clung to that pulse like a lifeline. Yet beyond that warmth, she sensed something else. A faint, slithering malice, like footsteps in a corridor where no one should be walking. It wasn't Elias, it wasn't her attendants, it was something darker. Through the bond, she whispered into his mind, "Elias, are you safe?" His reply came, startled but steady. "For now, the guards are watching me like a hawk. Why?" She closed her sightless eyes, focusing on the faint tremor she felt creeping at the edges of her awareness. "Because someone plots. I hear them in the shadows. They want to end this bond before the council can decide." At that very moment, in the guest wing, Elias caught the faint scrape of a blade being drawn. His hand went instinctively to his side, empty. His weapons had been confiscated. The bond pulsed again. Serenya's voice was urgent in his mind. "They're coming for you." The door to his quarters burst open. Figures cloaked in dark silk stormed inside, blades gleaming with poison light. Their eyes burned with fanatic resolve. "The human must die," one hissed. "End the abomination!" Elias moved on instinct, snatching up the only weapon within reach, a bronze staff used for ceremonial display. It was heavy, awkward, but better than nothing. The assassins lunged. Elias blocked the first strike, metal screeching against metal. His muscles burned, but he held his ground. Across the palace, Serenya rose from her chair, her heart hammering. She couldn't see the battle, but she felt it. The rush of adrenaline in Elias's body, the sharp flare of pain as a blade grazed his arm, the stubborn will that refused to yield. She staggered into the corridor, attendants shouting in alarm, "Princess, you must stay inside!" But Serenya pushed past them, guided by the bond. "No, I know the way." Through the hall she moved, her feet swift, her hand skimming the walls. Every turn Elias made in his desperate fight echoed in her chest. Every blow he landed reverberated through her. At last she reached a hidden passage, a servant's tunnel that connected the wings. She pressed forward, heart pounding. "Hold on, Elias! Hold on!" Inside his chamber, Elias fought like a cornered wolf. One assassin fell with a crushed jaw, another staggered back with broken ribs. But he was tiring. There were too many. Then, bang, the servant's door flew open. Serenya stumbled inside, her face pale but resolute. The assassins froze in shock. "Princess!" Before they could move, Serenya raised her hand. Her voice cut like steel. "Touch him, and the throne dies with me." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Elias seized the opening, slamming his staff into the nearest attacker. Another went down, shrieking. The rest faltered. The palace guards arrived at last, drawn by the noise. Blades clashed, shouts filled the air, and the assassins fled into the shadows, vanishing like smoke.
Silence followed, broken only by Elias's ragged breathing. He leaned against the wall, blood dripping from his arm. Serenia rushed to him, her hands trembling as they found his wound. "You're hurt." "I'll live," he managed, forcing a smile. "Thanks to you." Her blind eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. She pressed her forehead lightly to his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Through the bond she whispered, "I will not let them take you from me." He rested a hand gently on her hair. "They'll have to kill me first, and even then, I'll fight them from the grave." The bond pulsed warmly, fiercely between them, sealing the promise. But outside their embrace, the palace boiled with conspiracy. Nobles whispered that the princess had betrayed her people by defending the human. The emperor's fury grew colder, sharper, and in the deepest corners of the palace, more blades were being sharpened. This was no longer a scandal. It was war brewing in the shadows, and Serenia knew if they were to survive, she and Elias would have to rely on each other completely.
The council chamber had burned with accusation. Assassins in the palace had nearly killed Elias, and instead of outrage at the treachery, the nobles twisted it into blame. "The human brings danger," they cried. "The princess defies us for him." The emperor's verdict was cold as stone. Elias was to be executed at dawn. But the bond would not allow it. Serenia felt Elias's fear deep in her chest, and Elias felt her desperate resolve pulsing in his mind. Together, they made their choice. They fled. Under cover of night, Serenia led him through servant tunnels, hidden gardens, and long-forgotten stairways carved into the crystal walls. Elias's eyes did the seeing, but Serenia's psychic senses guided them, warning of patrols before they rounded corners. For the first time, they relied wholly on each other. By the time they escaped the outer gates, the palace alarms had begun to ring. Distant shouts echoed through the mountains. The bond between them throbbed like a heartbeat, steady, urgent. They plunged into the wilderness. The Valaris forests glowed faintly in the starlight, their trees shimmering with bioluminescent veins. The ground hummed with life, strange and alien. To Elias, it was breathtaking. To Serenia, it was freedom. Though she could not see, she felt the open air, the sense of living soil, the endless sky pressing above. They walked until their legs burned, until the sounds of pursuit faded behind them. At last they collapsed beside a stream that shimmered like liquid silver. Elias tore a strip from his sleeve to bind the wound on his arm, reopening from the earlier fight. Serenia reached for his hand. "Let me," she whispered. Her fingers brushed his skin, trembling but careful. She could not see the wound, yet she traced it with uncanny accuracy, as if the bond guided her touch. Elias found himself staring at her pale face, illuminated by the glow of the alien water. She was exhausted, fragile, yet radiated a kind of quiet strength that humbled him. "You shouldn't have followed me into that fight," he murmured. "And let them take you?" she retorted softly. "No, I'd rather die beside you than live without you." The words struck him harder than any blade. He swallowed, unsure how to answer, but she must have felt his heart quicken through the bond, because a faint, almost shy smile touched her lips. The night grew colder. Elias built a small fire from the dried husks of glowing reeds. Serenia sat close, listening to the crackle, feeling the warmth. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was intimate. "Tell me," she said suddenly, "what do the stars look like?" Elias leaned back, staring upward. The sky was unlike Earth's, vast, crowded with constellations, each star pulsing with strange colors. "They look like endless lanterns spread across black velvet.
Some burn gold, others shimmer blue, a few pulse red like embers. And they go on forever, said Anya. Forever. Through the bond, he let her feel his awe, the wonder that filled his chest. She gasped, clutching her heart as the sensation washed over her. For a moment, she felt as though she too stood beneath that infinite sky, with eyes open wide. "I can almost see it," she whispered. "Through you." Their bond pulsed again, stronger than ever. He turned his head. She was so close now, her face bathed in firelight, her blind eyes reflecting his image faintly through their link. Elias's hand lifted, almost without thought, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. She froze, breath catching. For a heartbeat, the world held still, the forest glowing around them, the fire crackling softly, their bond thrumming with something fragile and new. But before either could lean closer, a distant horn blared in the night. The hunters had found their trail. Serenia flinched. Elias grabbed his staff, his jaw tightening. "They won't stop." "No," said Anya, agreed, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. "But neither will we." They doused the fire, gathered their meager strength, and pressed deeper into the wild unknown. The pursuit would not end, but in that moment, Elias knew he would walk through any wilderness, face any enemy, so long as Serenia's hand was in his. And Serenia, though blind, knew with perfect clarity, with Elias beside her, she was not broken, she was whole.
The hunt did not end. For days, Elias and Serenia evaded pursuit through forests that glowed like embers and mountains that hummed with alien life. Yet the bond warned them of danger long before they saw it. Serenia felt the prickle of hostile minds in the distance, and Elias trusted her instincts more than his eyes. But the Empire would not give up. At dawn on the seventh day, they were surrounded. A canyon lay before them, its jagged cliffs glowing faintly with veins of crystal. The only path was narrow, exposed, and on the ridges above, soldiers appeared, dozens, armored in living steel, blades shimmering with deadly light. Serenia's breath hitched. She felt their intent, cold, merciless. They were not here to capture, they were here to kill. Elias stepped in front of her, staff gripped tightly in his hands. His arm still ached from old wounds, but his stance was firm, his gaze unflinching. "They'll cut us down if we stay," he muttered. "We'll have to fight our way through." Serenia's hand found his arm. Her touch was trembling but resolute. "Then we fight together." Their bond pulsed, fierce and alive. The soldiers descended. Blades flashed in the half-light. Elias parried one, struck another, moving with desperate precision. Serenia, blind yet connected, guided him with sudden clarity. "Left!" she cried through the bond. He spun, blocking just in time. "Duck, now!" He dropped, and a blade sang through the air above his head. It was as if they were one body, one mind, her foresight and his reflexes blending seamlessly. Where she could not see, he could. Where he could not anticipate, she did. The first wave of soldiers fell back, stunned. Never had they seen such unity. But more came. Arrows of light streaked through the air. Elias shielded Serenia with his body, gritting his teeth as searing pain tore across his shoulder. He staggered but did not fall. Serenia clutched his hand, pouring her strength into him through the bond. He felt it, warmth flooding his veins, a fire that pushed back against the agony.
Her voice rang in his mind, steady and sure. "You are not alone. Stand with me." And he did. Together they surged forward, breaking through the enemy line. Blow after blow fell, guided by Serenia's psychic warnings and Elias's unyielding will. But the canyon betrayed them. One soldier hurled a blade of crackling energy that struck the ground at Elias's feet. The explosion ripped through the path, sending him sprawling. His staff tumbled into the abyss. Elias hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from his chest. Pain flared, his vision blurred. The world tilted, dimming at the edges. Serenia screamed his name, dropping to her knees beside him. Her hands shook as they pressed against his bloodied chest. Through the bond, she felt his life flickering, fading like a candle in the wind. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. "No, you cannot leave me. Not now. Not when I finally found you." Tears streamed down her sightless eyes, falling onto his face. The soldiers circled, weapons raised, but none dared strike. For the bond between them was blazing like fire, visible now, threads of light binding them, pulsing with desperate strength. Serenia bent low, clutching Elias to her. Her voice rose, trembling but fierce, echoing through the canyon. "If he dies, your empire dies with him." Her words rang like prophecy. The soldiers faltered, shaken. For in that moment she was no broken princess. She was a queen, radiant with defiance and love. Elias stirred faintly beneath her touch, his breath shallow but alive. Their bond surged, pulling him back from the edge. Through her tears, Serenia felt his heart beat steady. He whispered hoarsely, "Still here, because you wouldn't let me go." Relief shuddered through her. She pressed her forehead against his, whispering through the bond, "Never, I'll never let you go." The soldiers, unnerved by the spectacle, began to retreat. Whispers spread among them. Perhaps this bond was not weakness, but something greater, something unbreakable. As the canyon fell silent once more, Serenia held Elias in her arms. He was alive, but barely. His blood stained her hands, and she knew the fight was not yet over. The empire would come again. The emperor would not yield easily. But she also knew this: whatever trial awaited them, they had faced fire together, and neither had broken.
The canyon still reeked of smoke and blood. Elias lay against Serenia's lap, his breath shallow, his skin pale. Through the bond, she felt his pain as if it were her own. Yet she also felt his stubborn heartbeat, refusing to stop. She would not let it stop. When the soldiers carried them back to the palace, there was no triumph in their steps. They had witnessed something they could not explain. Two souls fighting as one, defying death itself. Whispers followed them through the crystal halls. Some called it blasphemy. Others murmured it was destiny. In the great chamber, the emperor waited. His gaze burned like fire as he looked upon Serenia, her dress torn, her hands blood-stained from cradling the human. "You shame me," he thundered. "You shame the empire. You bind yourself to an outsider, a lesser creature. Enough." The word was soft, but it cut through the hall like a blade. Serenia rose slowly to her feet, still supporting Elias. Her blind eyes seemed to glow faintly, lit by the bond itself. For the first time in her life, her voice did not tremble. "I am not ashamed. I have lived my life scorned, rejected, treated as broken. Yet this human saw me. He did not turn away. He fought beside me, bled beside me, nearly died beside me. That is no weakness, Father. That is strength.
Gasps rippled through the chamber. No one had ever heard the princess speak so boldly. The emperor's face darkened. Strength, a crippled daughter, and the human soldier. That is not strength, it is a curse. Serenia lifted her chin, her pale eyes unyielding. No, it is love. Her words struck the hall silent. She turned toward the crowd of nobles, her voice carrying now, steady as the pulse of the bond. You measure worth by power, by perfection, by sight. Yet in all your strength, not one of you could reach me. Not one of you could stand with me. Only he could. And through him I see not only the world, but myself, whole, complete. Elias stirred weakly, managing a faint smile. And I see through you, your courage, your heart, more powerful than any empire. The bond between them flared visibly again, threads of light weaving around them both, undeniable. The nobles bowed their heads, awed and unsettled. Even the emperor faltered, his fury wavering before the truth blazing in front of him. Finally, one of the elder priests stepped forward, his voice reverent. Perhaps this is not an abomination. Perhaps it is a gift, a union beyond species, a bond we were too blind to understand. Murmurs of agreement spread. The tide was turning. The emperor clenched his fists, but he could not command away what every eye had seen. At last, he gave a sharp, bitter nod. So be it. If the bond cannot be broken, then let it be acknowledged. Serenia exhaled, trembling with relief. She tightened her hold on Elias, her heart singing with triumph. The days that followed were not easy. Elias's wounds healed slowly, each scar a reminder of what they had endured. The nobles remained divided, some suspicious, others respectful. But the whispers in the streets began to change. No longer the broken princess, Serenia was now the bonded one, the ruler who had defied tradition and still stood unshaken. And through it all, Elias never left her side. One evening, as they stood together on the palace balcony, Serenia turned her face to the heavens. Elias described the stars for her again, lanterns across black velvet stretching into forever. She reached for his hand. Their bond pulsed warmly, filling her chest with certainty. I cannot see them, but I no longer need to, because through you I see enough. Elias smiled, his thumb brushing over her fingers. And through you, I have learned that love is more than sight or strength. It's choosing, again and again, no matter the cost. Below them, the city shimmered. Above them, the stars burned eternal. For the first time in her life, Serenia felt no emptiness, no shame, no loneliness. She was not broken. She was not unwanted. She was seen. And together, human and alien, blind princess and soldier, they were unbreakable. A new dawn had risen.